Hi chat, welcome to Textiles with Becca. Today I'll be showing you how to make this baby doll dress, tear dress, gathered dress, whatever you want to call it. Stay tuned to learn how to make it. So here are a few items that you will need to get started. You will need an oversized tee that has a similar fit to what you're going for. You'll need some pattern making paper, but of course you can use any crafts paper you've got lying about. You will also need 2 meters of your chosen fabric and of course your sewing notions. Let's get started. Roll out your pattern paper and square it off if need be. Grab your t-shirt and fold it into half, but also turn the sleeves inside just like I'm doing right here. Now align the center of your tee with the straight edge of your paper. If you had to square it out, just use that line that you drew and then just trace out the whole thing. Once that's finished, grab your rulers and go over your outline just like I'm doing right here. I'm using the same pattern paper to make both my front and back patterns. I'll just go in and mark where my front neckline would be. I also wanted a V neckline, so I went ahead and measured 7 inches down from that point, which is what I wanted. You can go as low or as high as you want, and then just draw a straight line from that corner to that point. At this point, you should go in and add seam allowance, ideally 5/8 of an inch. But I used a tee that was way bigger than what I wanted, so I actually didn't add any seam allowance. The only seam allowance I added was for that neckline, but for the rest of it, I just left it because I knew it was going to be way bigger if I added more seam allowance. So just go ahead and cut it out and label it as well. So in case you want to make it again, you know exactly what you're doing. You don't have to go through these stages all over again. Overall, this is what your bodice pattern pieces should look like, which you'll cut both of them on the fold. You'll cut one from your fabric and then one from your lining. So onto your sleeves, again, grab your pattern paper and place your sleeve onto it and just trace it out, just like I'm doing here. Now, if you just wanted a straight normal sleeve, this is alright. All you have to do is, again, cut it on the folds, and also you would need to cut 2 pieces, one for each sleeve. I wanted flared ones. I wanted them to be a bit more gathered. So if you're like me, what you should do is grab another piece of pattern paper and fold it into half, then grab the pattern piece we've just created for the normal straight sleeve and cut that out. Now our new sleeve pattern will also be cut on the folds, and we will again need 2 of these. As for the remainder of the dress, you will need 2 rectangles. The first rectangle will represent your first tier, so its length should be cut to wherever your desired length for it to stop is, and you should also allow for 5/8 of a seam allowance. And then the width of it will be half of your underbust times 1.5. You will also need to cut 2 pieces of your main fabric. For your second rectangle, this will represent the length of the remainder of your dress, so choose a length that allows for that. And then for the width, that would be half the circumference of your top tier skirt, and you will multiply that by 1.5 as well. And again, you will need to cut 2 of these pieces. So overall, these are all the pattern pieces that we're going to need. So let's get cutting and stitching. So starting with the bodice, just cut out your pattern pieces. You will need 1 piece for the front with the main fabric, 1 for the back as well, and then you also need the lining pieces. Once you've done that, just put your right sides together for front and back and pin on the side as well as the shoulder seams, and then just do a straight stitch. I used 5/8 of a seam allowance. Do the same for your lining pieces. I happen to use the same fabric to make my lining, but if you have a different fabric, it doesn't matter, you just do the exact same thing. And then after you've done that, insert your lining right sides together into your main fabric, and then again stitch the neckline, making sure that you're stitching your v-neck nicely. So this is what you should have when you're done. All you have to do is turn it inside out and then press it really nicely, because then the next step is to snip it, because this is obviously the neckline, it's carved, so you want the fabric to be a bit more relaxed. So what I did was I cut it, I snipped it, but then I also went ahead and trimmed the seam allowance just so I do not have any of that bulk. And once I was done, I turned it out nicely like this, and yeah, I had a neckline. Into the bottom part of your dress, just cut out your first 2 rectangles and pin them right sides together and stitch on the side seams. Once you've done that, don't forget to give it a nice press. We will then need a needle and thread, which is the technique we're going to use to gather our fabric. You could also use the longest stitch on your sewing machine, where you just run a straight stitch, very long, the longest, you use the longest stitch, and then just stitch all around, and then just pull at your thread. But because I have a lot of fabric, I find that I sometimes I end up like tearing the fabric, not the fabric, the thread. It it tears, so I don't like to use it if I'm gathering a lot of fabric. So I prefer this method with needle and thread. Making sure you're using obviously your doubling up on that thread so it's nice and strong. And then you just go in and out, in and out, in and out, and you pull until you're finished. What you should then do with your bodice turned the right way out, go ahead and do a stitch using maybe a quarter of a seam allowance, just a straight stitch around the bottom, just so that your main fabric and lining are attached to each other at the waist. What you then need to do is turn your ruffle inside out, so the right side of the fabric is inside and the wrong side of the fabric is on the outside, and then grab your bodice, which it should be right sides out, and insert it into your top tier. Now make sure that you're pinning right sides together. You should have something like this. Again, you're pinning right sides together, and you're also making sure that you're spreading out those gathers nicely so they're evenly spaced out, just like this. Now for your bottom tier, you could go ahead and do the same as what we've done, but because it's way too long for myself, I decided to gather it before I stitched it at the seams, which I found to be way easier and more manageable. Once you have gathered both your bottom rectangles, just pin them with right sides together on the sides and do a straight stitch just like we did before. And again, with your tier turned wrong sides out, turn your dress right sides out and insert it into your tier and pin just like we did before, making sure that you're pinning right sides together. Once that's done, you can then go ahead and hem your dress. All I did was turn it about half an inch and then turn it again, and then just run a straight stitch all around. Very, very simple. To make it easier for you, if your fabric is not like my one, because I was using cotton, so it's nice and easy to work with. But if yours isn't quite as nice, you can just press it before you go into your sewing machine. Most especially if you're a beginner as well, I would actually advise that you do go ahead and press those folds first before you go onto the sewing machine. Now onto the sleeve. Again, you should have cut out 2 of these. What you should do is fold the straight edge up in about 1/2 inch and press that. Once you're finished, go ahead and put right sides together and do a straight stitch along the side seam. Then when you're done, give that a good press and go back to that straight edge and turn it in again to create the finishing of the sleeve. Press it down and take it onto your sewing machine to hem it. After that, all you have to do again is just use the needle and thread method to gather the top part of your sleeves, and you should end up with something like this. Just as we had done on our waistline, you should go into your armhole and do a straight stitch along the entire armhole just so your lining and your fabric are together. After you've done that, just go in with your sleeves and pin right sides together, just like I'm doing here. Once you are done stitching your sleeves together, we are finished. That's it. We're done. We have a baby doll dress, a tiered dress, a gathered dress, a circle dress. Could you call it a circle dress? I don't know. We have a dress. We have a dress that is so pretty and one that's ready for spring and summer. And overall, just pretty. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comment section and I hope to interact with everyone. Until next time, bye.